Давайте послушаем, что там такое. Локи Вики.
The Product. In June 2017,
Ой, Рэббен Истерман.
a covert agent from an anti-racist organization called Hope Not Hate went undercover to interview several alt-right figures, including one of the movement's leaders.
Так. Нихуя себе. Перевода на русский нет. Хотя тут, в принципе, все автоматически. Так. Давайте так.
The Product. In June 2017, a covert agent from an anti-racist organization called Hope Not Hate went undercover to interview several alt-right figures, including one of the movement's leaders, Greg Johnson, at a white nationalist convention, the Northwest Forum. Johnson, who organized the convention, is one of the founders of Countercurrents, a web magazine and a publisher that has a reputation for being more intellectual than your typical far-right website. Eventually, the infiltrator learned about Johnson's secret agent plan. This strategy calls for Johnson and his fellow white nationalists to pretend to support diversity so they can move into positions of power where they can hire other racists and keep non-whites from getting into the company. Now that is an interesting plan. In his Rules for Radicals, community organizer and tactician Saul Alinsky ridiculed the idea that there are realistic alternatives to working inside the system, calling them a mess of rhetorical garbage. He reminds us that power comes out of the barrel of a gun is an absurd rallying cry when the other side has all the guns. You can't possibly out-violence the United States government. It's infinitely more capable at using violence to achieve its ends than some right-wing militia made up of internet nerds and increasingly senile boomers. Furthermore, it's hard to see what right-wing violence can actually accomplish, except for pushing even more people towards the opposition and increasing the sales of weapon skins for CSGO. It seems counterproductive, so the only option you have is to out-organize your opponents. The last 4 years taught right-wingers a bitter lesson. The GOP and other organizations have immune systems that are well adapted to resisting any kind of real right-wing entryism. And it's safe to assume that things are even worse in academia. It's an extremely hostile environment. And yes, it's shitty and it's not fair. Now you can be a little bitch and cry about it, or you can realize the futility of feeling sorry for yourself, learn a lesson, and start organizing. Build power. Try changing system from the inside. It's not like right-wingers have any other options available to them. At least that's what you'd do following Alinsky's advice. But there is an even bigger problem than bad tactics or lack of organization. A problem few people on the far right talk about because, for them, it's kind of embarrassing. To be successful, a movement needs to grow. To grow, attract more people. To do that, it needs to provide them with something they want. It needs to help them, to offer solutions to their problems, to organize them, to make them think. This is achieved by production of content. And this is what the problem is. You see, most right-wingers have nothing to say. Intellectually and culturally, most of them have nothing to offer to other people. There is no right-wing product. What is a product? The dictionary definition is that it is anything that can be offered to a market that might satisfy a want or need. It's essays, books, videos, podcasts, philosophy, shows, debates and conversations are also a product, as can be movie or video game reviews, travel blogs or stand-up comedy. News, when correctly interpreted, can be a product as well. So can be tweets and Facebook posts. These things can be exchanged for social and eventually political capital. That is, assuming that somebody actually wants them. A product needs to be of high quality. Certainly nobody wants to make shitty things a part of their life. If we conceptualize the dissident right as a corporation, then what would be the product that it makes? Well, it's not political solutions, that's for sure. And it's not books or articles. Yes, alt-writers produce plenty of those, but they are almost always terrible, and there is no demand for them. Even the most popular dissident right websites are not actually that popular compared to the real media. And I can't imagine ever reading one of the books published by Greg Johnson's company. This is not a personal attack, this is simply heuristics. Imagine reading my nationalist pony. Buttercup Dew's Tumblr blog on the iconic children's cartoon
Чего? Серьезно?
series My Little Pony Friendship is Magic is a masterpiece of culture jamming. Buttercup analyzes My Little Pony from a white nationalist, new rightist, traditionalist, and neo-pagan perspective. This joke was never funny, not even in 2010, and it's one of the more intriguing books on their site. Right-wing ability to produce content is greatly affected by two factors: by low overall human capital of the movement, i.e. the lack
Низкий капитал людей. Его придумал я,
of
еврей.
talent, and by censorship. You can still make videos after your YouTube channel gets banned, but you have no way to distribute them to a larger audience. Modern technology has provided right-wingers with some of the most powerful tools in history of humanity to spread their ideas. Yes, censorship plays a large role in hindering this process, but ultimately, the modern right wing, specifically the dissident right, is not successful because the content it's producing is bad. Nobody wants it, and until this situation is resolved, the far right will not see success. In the past, dissidents and radicals had to write their books while in prison and then distribute them through underground samizdat. The level of difficulty was very high, and yet they still managed to change the world. In the modern cyberpunk dystopia, we have tools like YouTube, WordPress, Facebook, Medium, and Twitter. Without these tools, it's impossible to bring a movement into being. There are no real alt-tech alternatives. In case of YouTube, there can be no alternative because such a service is very expensive to maintain. As of right now, it's not even clear if YouTube actually makes any money. And video is without a doubt the most powerful medium when it comes to reaching a mass audience. An important thing to consider is that the ideological adversaries possess the same tools the right-wingers do. This makes the struggle uncomfortably socially Darwinian. But not in a way Nazis imagined it. In order to create product, to create things people actually like and want, a movement needs to have a lot of talented people. Human capital was always a problem for the right-wing scene, perhaps even a fatal defect. Ideology aside, do you know anyone on the dissident right who is as talented as Ollie Thorne, Harris Bomberguy, or Natalie Wynn? The far right is doing a little better when it comes to podcasts, or was doing, rather, before they got purged from social media, before PayPal and the banks refused to work with them, before Gen X humor got really old, before people stopped caring about politics, which always happens after an election. Before all that, there used to be multiple edgy racist shows with tens of thousands of non-unique downloads. But that era is gone. Meanwhile, the opposition is flourishing. The leftist podcast scene grew into a huge community of politically active Zoomers and millennials. Sure, there are high-profile ersatz-rightist intellectuals like Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson, but as Vox.com reminds us, despite appearances, this culture is declining as well. In absolute terms, dark web intellectuals enjoy far more access to mainstream than genuine leftists, but in relative terms, they have far lower status than their intellectual forebears of 20 or even 10 years ago. If only you knew how bad things really are. This situation is clearly not compatible with long-term success. Optimizing cultural output is paramount.
Вот такой вот ролик Рэба Нестермана. Так. Ну чё, проведем с вами аукцион.